Dale Miller, welcome to the Modern Sales Management Podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Now, this is a conversation I've been looking forward to for quite some time since we first connected. But before we get into uh, the meat of what we want to talk about today, tell the audience a little bit about the road you took to managing sales teams.
It's an interesting route. Started out as a chemist and worked my way through quality and then moved into technical service, ultimately moved into sales, then sales management, now sales leadership. It's been a very fun road.
What are the different types and sizes of sales teams that you've managed over the past few years?
Oh, very cool. It's been, from a local regional type of situation where I've had, no more than 4 or 5 sellers reporting into me. And as that continued to grow and continued to do very well, that first role within 3 years, I think we almost tripled our revenue. I was moved into a more pronounced role that was more North American, and that team expanded to about 30. And at one point, a year or two ago, I had over 70 sales reps globally, managing all regions of the world. In my current role right now, that's exactly what I'm doing as well. I manage a team of about 20 plus sellers globally in all regions of the world.
Oh, that's outstanding. And I mean, we're going to get into a little bit more about your track record a little bit later. When we have conversations on this podcast, there's really 2 reasons why this podcast exists. If sales were and managing sales teams were easy, we wouldn't need this podcast. But there's 2 sides of it. One is things have changed in selling and in managing sales teams. And then the second reason we have conversations is to try to get ahead of trends and things that are going to be beneficial and are going to differentiate you a year from now, 2 years from now. So let's start with the what's changed in the past. Well, you can say the past year, but I mean, let's broaden it out a little bit beyond COVID and say, what are the broader changes in the past 2 or 3 years in managing sales teams?
Sure. Customer engagement has been probably the most difficult thing to do over the last couple of years because honestly, even though social media and other means of communication have blown up, information and access to information has also blown up, which means that a lot of the customers are much further down the customer journey than perhaps they were prior, where you would have to articulate a value proposition from the very beginning, prior face to face, to really get the point across. A lot of the engineers and customers in question typically have already done a lot of their due diligence, a lot of their research, and are probably 50, 60, in some cases, even further down the value chain or the customer journey. And so getting access to those customers when you get them is very important, and you better be able to deliver quickly. You had a little bit more play, if you will, in years past where you could basically help them through that journey.
Right. They had to come to you. They had to come to you to get answers, and now
Yeah,
they can find answers on their own. Do you see this across all of the industries that you've worked in? Is this, or is
yeah,
it specific
absolutely.
spaces?
Whether it's aerospace, military, electronics, all of them, automotive, almost every respective technology out there now, the information is very accessible. And frankly, the talent that comes into the talent pool now, they come a lot more prepared than perhaps they had in the past. And so it's very unique and challenging. So now you have to change the way and have to adapt to the way that you go after these customers based on their ability to already be down the value chain or the customer journey much further along than perhaps they were prior.
That's interesting. When you talk about customer engagement, what is that? Like, I have an idea of what customer engagement is, but I find that a term like that means different things to different organizations or to different people within that organization. Bring us down a level and paint the picture of what you're talking about when you say customer engagement has changed.
This is a classic example. Podcasts and casts and face-to-face interactions are almost synonymous now. There is very few handshakes unless there's a real uh-oh moment on a production line or an install. Getting in front of a customer on a production line is very challenging. So engagement now is really all aspects of the customer journey, where you're actually starting to do automated marketing to them and get them engaged, get them to see and help them with some of their research. Then you're taking them to the next step, which is actually feeding them a lot of information where they've actually requested information or they've raised their hand in one way or another, whether it's subtle or direct. And you map that out, whether it's, open rates on your automated campaigns, or if it's a simple request for quote. The ability to react upon those and automate some of those systems so that you can basically quote a customer and have product ready to ship within 24 hours is almost the standard now. Go ahead.
And was it going in this direction pre-COVID, or COVID just accelerated it?
Yeah, COVID made it so that you had to do this. Before, it was a nice luxury. People were slowly adopting some of these techniques and technologies to help them adapt to some of these changes. But COVID basically mandated it. If you don't do some of these things that we'll talk about in a little bit, whether it's automated marketing, a strategy on new customer, new contact acquisition, or how to close the sale and the value proposition, how to manage your content, all those different things, you're going to have some real challenges ahead of you.
What are teams struggling the most with right now? And what are they going to be struggling the most with in 2021 in terms of delivering value in the sales process and adapting to these changes? What are you, from a sales leadership perspective, you're trying to corral a team into operating in a certain way? What's working well and where are the opportunities?
So one of the big challenges is simply adapting to these changes, adapting to these changes. For example, most sales reps used to spend 4 out of 5 days on the road. Now they're spending 1 out of 5. It's completely flipped. And that's if you're lucky enough to be needed at a customer site or be able to visit a customer site. So what's happened is a lot of the sellers in general, or salesmanship in general, has to adapt to this change. They have to actually, how do I say this? Instead of having 1 or 2 meetings or 3 meetings a day, if you're really lucky, face to face, now you're having a dozen in this manner with Teams or Zoom. And then now you're trying to accelerate the sales or follow the sales or push the sales forward in this manner. And so you have to adjust to that. And a lot of us aren't used to being, I don't have to say this any other way, but stuck in the stall. We're used to being stallions out in the road, running hard, going nonstop, morning through evening. And we're doing that, but now you're stuck in your office. And you're not running, but now you're running from Zoom call to Teams call to another Zoom call, nonstop.
Does that take a toll on the team psychologically?
I think it has in the beginning. I think people are adjusting to it. In the beginning, it was very hard for a lot of the sellers that are used to being on the road, and having those frequent flyer miles and, being on planes and doing all those kinds of things. It's, in a lot of ways, sales is glorified in that regard, but they don't realize it means that you're on the computer until midnight writing emails.
Right.
The good news is now you're having more projects and are able to manage more projects because you're always home.
Right.
Bad news is it's a lot of projects. So in my opinion, what used to happen when my sellers, I used to tell them, if you have more than 15 to 20 projects, at one point you start to dilute yourself. That number's changed. That number is more like 30, 35 projects. So you're constantly managing at any given time and pushing forward on the customer journey. But it's because you have more time. If you do this right, you're more efficient. But I have a sneaky suspicion that, and I haven't mapped it out yet, but the closure rates aren't as high. because there is a lot of value still in that face-to-face, the ability to shake a hand and really get to know somebody in a personal way.
There's a lot of trust and rapport and just off the cuff value that's delivered in that environment. What else are you telling your team to help them adapt successfully?
That's a good question. What we're focused on are the things that matter. And so I find that sales reps, just as a nature of the beast, when you see something come across your desk, regardless of size, you're going to work on it. So keeping them focused on the things that matter. What I mean by that are the projects that move the needle for the organization. During the stress of COVID, you have a lot of people doing the onesie twosie small projects because now they have more time, but that's starting to change. The strategies that we'll talk about here shortly have started to develop more and more projects and more relevant projects, ones that actually move the needle. And so you have to start to figure out a strategy to reduce the noise, reduce the activity on projects that are small in value, that don't change your organization in as far as growth goes, or find ways to automate that bottom or those applications or those sales.
Well, one of the reasons that I'm so excited to be talking to you today is the 4-part strategy that you've put together to help teams be successful in this new environment, this new selling environment. Because all the things we've talked about in the past 10 minutes they're all important, but it can get overwhelming very quickly. So you developed this 4-pillar framework that I'd like you to walk us through that creates this kind of next generation process and tool set for growing your market share. Would you mind walking us through first?
No problem. Would you like me to throw up a slide, or would you like me just to talk through it?
You can definitely pull up a slide. I want you to start though with how you developed it and why you developed it.
Sure. So the first part of this is we found that, again, people were moving further and further down the customer journey, and it became more and more difficult to intercept them and help guide them in your direction and really sell the value proposition of your, whether it be your organization's technology or service, it doesn't matter. You have to still be able to catch them. And so I found that a lot of people, because they can't get out and see new customers, they were having a difficult time working on getting those new customers. So we had to come up with a way to help streamline our sales team on both automating the processes where we could and accelerating new customer, new contact acquisition, and ultimately growth of the organization with other techniques or technologies that were out there. So basically, we wanted to continue to grow, and we wanted to grow aggressively. We didn't want to be your normal GDP type of growth organization. We wanted to 10x that, make it something that's exciting to be a part of.
It's
And
ambitious.
So, yeah, we wanted to really think that through. And so some of the things that we did have done that. In my past, one of the organizations I was a part of, we took the company, we quadrupled it in size in 8 years.
Wow.
In the last 6 months, I know COVID has a little bit of uptick here because sales are starting to come back, but our order bookings have almost doubled in 6 months.
That's
So
incredible.
that's where we're at, and that's what these techniques that we'll talk through.
All right, so let's get into it. Do you prioritize these in a specific order, or because the first thing that you refer to is what you call true CRM? Well,
Mm-hmm.
tell me about that.
So a lot of people get enamored with the CRM acronym, a true customer relationship management database, and more often than not, a lot of the people that implement them, at least what I found from either our competition, our customers, or even our suppliers, when we talk to them about CRM and how they utilize it, they typically use it just for opportunity management. It's basically they'll throw some contacts in there because their boss told them to, and they'll track their funnel and the number of projects they're working on. And they might have a couple cool dashboards that say, hey, we're doing good, but they're not really tracking their activities. They're not tracking the funnel all the way from beginning to end and and leveraging that and start to track conversion rates of those, and then implementing that to the other aspects of the business. The real glory to why this is so successful, the 4 pillars here, is actually integrating all 4 of these pillars together so they work together seamlessly. And that's what really makes the difference. But a true CRM is more than just an opportunity management or a contact database. It has to do a heck of a lot more. One of the things we also do is we actually use it to not only manage our customers, but our suppliers.
Okay. So channel management, in your world, manufacturers, reps.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things we've also done is we've actually had, we've allowed access to our CRM with our channels, whether it's manufacturer reps, they actually input their opportunities that they're working on, so we can actually see their success. And that allows us to find where we have voids in our geographical reach, or where we're really successful for that matter.
So if someone's listening to this today and say, okay, I'm a little bit hooked on the idea of true CRM. I have a CRM. We feel like we're utilizing it pretty well. How do I know if I'm following this true CRM methodology? What are the major differences between just a CRM and what you refer to as true customer relationship management?
Well, first, one of the cool things that we did is we hooked it up to our ERP system. So you're seeing real-time data. It's not just, as I said, an opportunity management system where you can see and the problem with real-time data versus whenever your sales rep gets around to putting in the data, is exactly that. If you have real-time data, you can make real-time decisions and you can track real opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about the automated marketing and the new customer acquisition part, as well as the content management part, but they all interrelate. So getting your automated marketing system to automatically load a lead and then be able to track that lead and see if your sales rep actually reacted to that lead within a certain period of time is important. We found that something like 50% of the sales that we got were because we reacted to an RFQ or some kind of lead that we generated through whatever means, a variety of means for that matter. If we reacted to it in less than 24 hours, we got the sale 50% of the time.
And you wouldn't have that data if you didn't have your lead management framework set up right in your CRM.
With real time.
With real time data that you can trust the data that's in there. All right. So you have your CRM set up the right way, pulling data from the right places with a sales process, business specific processes that your team can actually follow. What's next in this framework? And these aren't independent steps. These are all interconnected, and we'll see that at the end.
Yep. And so the secret here is also in the dashboards for the CRM is you got to be careful what you measure, because that's what you get. So measure things that you think are going to drive your business and keep it simple. I try to measure only 4 or 5 things. In this case, I try to measure opportunities created, opportunities closed, opportunities that are active, and engagement. So engagement revolves around, are you quoting? Where you're engaged with your channel, where you're engaged with your manufacturer reps, where you're not engaged is also important. Again, as we talked about earlier. Now coming back into the next tier, which is basically automated marketing, we used HubSpot. We've had outstanding success. Coupled with, our new customer, new contact acquisition, it's really helped us out on new customer. And I'll talk about the new customer, new contact acquisition here in a second, but on the automated marketing part, dripping value-added propositions and new technologies, whether it's NPI launches or existing uses of your current technologies in a best-in-class way, dripping that out to your customers on a routine basis is very important. The difference between dripping it out and doing real automated marketing and spamming them is doing it so much that they ignore you and block you, right? The trick is finding something that really engages them and it's something that's valuable to them. So having a video file showing how you use the technology, and it can't be more than 30 seconds, because I don't know about you guys, but it seems like the attention span of my children is 30 seconds or less.
Right. The TikTokification of
exactly. So
Right.
you want to make sure that you identify your company quickly, you articulate the value proposition of the company quick, or of the technology that you're representing or the service you're representing quickly, and allow them different channels to communicate with you. And that might be request for quote, it might be request for more technical information, it might be request to have a visit. But bringing that back full circle to your CRM, that as soon as they click on one of those links, your sales rep is getting pinged, and he has 24 hours to react to that ping, or that customer is going somewhere else. And often it's quicker than that. And one of the things that I said, be careful what you measure, because that's what you get. One of the things that we did is, if they haven't reacted to it, my sales team hadn't reacted to it within 24 hours, there was an automated email that went to the next level up in my sales directors.
I like that. I like, we call it we have this automated accountability framework that we build into HubSpot that does just that. If it gets stuck in a stage, it hasn't been touched, the sales rep gets a reminder, sales manager gets a reminder. And if it still doesn't move, it sometimes it gets taken away from that rep and reassigned automatically.
Yeah, we've had to do that. We also have it go all the way up, because this is so important to the growth of our organization, that it comes up to our leadership team, the president and myself, if it goes 48 hours or longer without being touched. And those are the calls you don't want as a sales rep, right? The fact that we worked so hard to generate a real lead for you and you haven't reacted to it in 48 hours, that sends the wrong kind of communication. So I can tell you,
you're speaking my language.
It never happens, because they don't want that call. It only has to happen once, and when it does, they don't want to do it again.
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about. It works really well, but it's not these sales manager micromanaging the sales rep. It's not the sales rep being hovered over. It's the system taking care of that for you, and that's so important, especially if you have any volume of contacts coming through your system.
Yep.
I like that when you talk about automated marketing, you're talking about marketing plus sales. I mean, it's really through the handoff, through the connect process, and leveraging marketing in the marketing process and the sales process, leveraging that automation.
Yep. As I said, some of the things that you also want to have in that email, just you want to get one shot really in front of a customer when you're sending this stuff and they've opened it up. So you have to create that interest. And sometimes if you're sending it to technical groups, and this is one of the things that we'll talk about when we go to the next stage of this, that comes back into HubSpot and ultimately your CRM, is you want, if you're calling on engineers, you want that white paper, you want that technical comparison of your products versus other products that are in the marketplace. You want that value proposition that shows that they're getting great price, they're getting great product, they're getting great life, and you want to do it quickly. So having those different functions to be able to click back and get your attention and frankly work through HubSpot to get that lead sent back to your CRM. And also, if you do it really, really well, you make them put their contact information that you perhaps maybe don't have in that email, so that you continue to fill or enrich your database to make it more impactful. And so you can start really isolating the groups and targeting them with specific messages that that are going to be relevant to them.
Right. And it does it automatically. Are you seeing, and I don't want to get off track, but are you seeing thought leadership resonate more, or kind of product specific nuts and bolts? Let me give you the truth about what it's like to work with us, information, engaging people at a higher rate?
The things that we're finding most impactful is when you articulate a value proposition that's relevant to them. So if you're calling on engineers and you can show that, for example, at a customer similar to you, we found that we were able to increase throughput by 15%. We were able to reduce the overall cost by 12% just by implementing these technologies, and we were able to do it in 30 days. Is this something of interest to you? We'd like to talk to you. That's kind of the message, and you have to hit on those kinds of things. When you say thought-provoking, new and novel does work, but I find that tried and true often actually is what you end up selling.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if that was an answer to the question you were looking for,
No,
but
as I was looking at, we're finding that thought leadership is people are producing so much content that thought leadership is less engaging at a lower rate at this point in time than just nuts and bolts value proposition. Further down the funnel, product, middle of the funnel product information is resonating more. I
yeah,
was curious if
that's what we're finding as well.
it's more actionable.
Yeah, you have to find something that's relevant to them.
Yep, absolutely. So let's talk about uh, new customer, new contact acquisition, because that's the third tier in this process. So we have true CRM, automated marketing, and new customer, new contact acquisition. I'm really interested in how you set this up.
So this is what really drove a lot of growth, because you can automate your marketing, but you can only automate to the contacts that are in your database. It's not reaching new customers. So it's that adage of doing the same old milk run. So if you're not adding to it, and it's really hard to get into to a lot of doors or a lot of companies right now, so you have to come up with something that's got more reach. We went out, we looked at a variety of different technologies that were out there. And the one that we found that actually really made a difference, and I'll cite some examples of the impact that it had, was we bought into Zoom Info. It was very cost effective. And what they do is they go out and they've acquired a database and they continue to add to this database. Last I heard, it was 350 million people worldwide are in this database. And they've done a really good job of categorizing these contacts by industry, by title, by tier. So now you get into a situation where now you can start not just selling to your local yokels in purchasing or your local engineer. Now you can start to sell at a more corporate level as well. And with us, we went from generating somewhere around 20, 30,000 leads a year 2 companies ago when I first implemented this, to generating probably close to 1 million by the time I was done. And the problem wasn't my sales reps were actually calling for mercy because they were getting so many leads. We actually had to start to tone down the leads to make sure that we were getting the leads further down the customer journey to make it more impactful, and start to segregate the leads by hypothetical values to keep them focused on the ones that are going to make them a change, a real change in the company's revenue and growth.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's more than just buying a list, subscribing to something like Zoom Info. What are the steps you took to systematize this, to turn it into this new customer acquisition engine?
So what was really neat is we started to go after the different markets. We pick a market and we say, look, we're going to go after, I'm just going to pick on aerospace. We go after aerospace since it's down right now. We would find all of these aerospace accounts, none of them which we had data on. And what was really cool about Zoom Info that we really liked was it had an enrich program as well. And I'll come back to that. But we were able to isolate how many contacts that we never had prior. And those were put into our CRM and thus fed the engine for the automated marketing. Our contact reach in this company in 6 months that I'm right now has gone from 12,000 to 65,000.
Oh, wow.
So almost 5x what it was 6 months ago. And we know,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. And we know by our project load, just on the key projects, we've probably gone up almost 4x on large project volume, and our pipeline's gone up by almost 3x in that same period of time.
And the part that you're not saying is that, and it's implicit, that you
all these systems work together. So what happens
exactly, you need a system to do something with these leads. It's just acquiring the contacts is not the end game. It's feeding them into a system that generates
context gets put into your CRM. Then it goes to the automated marketing. Once it goes to the automated marketing, you generate the leads, which then, basically start to fill your list of things to do in your CRM as far as leads to follow up with. And then that starts loading into projects and getting those projects to the next steps. And then ultimately what that comes down to, though, is the last part, which is the content management. because you can't automate market until you have real content that's relevant to the audience that you're targeting.
Right.
And so developing tools that allow you to sell your technologies, specifically the value proposition of your technologies, and making that tool almost be standardized on your website with your sales reps, with your automated marketing techniques that you use is really, really important. And that, again, helps. It goes right in line with what we talked about from the very beginning. It helps the customer get through 60, 70, 80% of the customer journey. So when they generate the real lead and they're really talking to you, want to have an audience with you, you know that right now it's just basically reiterating the same value proposition that you've been pushing and helping close that sale.
And so you're talking about content on the marketing side that, to help educate people and bring them down the process and build a relationship before you even get to the sales. They're talking to a sales representative. Are you also talking about content that your sales team uses to guide people through the process when they are engaged with them?
So, for example, Showpad or HubSpot are two of the ones that I've used in the past. And I can tell you, for example, you could imagine having this interaction with yourself right now. I can pull up Showpad and I can talk through, I'll use what's relevant with the company I work for now, OK International, specifically Metcal. I could have our brand of Metcal and I could bring it up and say, would you like to talk about soldering stations, soldering tips, or fume extraction? And you say, well, let's talk about soldering station. I hit a button and it brings up all the different types of soldering stations that are out there. Do you want to talk about variable temperature or fixed temperature? What does that mean then? And you'll have the value proposition right there. And basically you can walk them through the entire decision node process and the value proposition of each respective technology to the point where when you get to the end and they say, I want this particular product, you say, no problem. What's your email address real quick? You type in the email address, it automatically sends the tech data sheet, the video file that shows them cost and use, or if you have a cost and use calculator, that'll send to them so they can articulate the value proposition themselves or calculate themselves. And it automatically loads it as a lead in your CRM because now you've got the contact information that you did on the fly.
And it's kind of an interactive content tool. I'm seeing those being more important than static content, single landing pages. It's kind of a learning center, but there's a level of interactivity and personalization that's built into it that gets
that
people
helps drive that sale, and it helps them learn. Right?
You're serving.
Yeah, their customers going, oh wait, you mean there's two types of soldering stations? Or what do you mean there's a difference between a silicone adhesive or a urethane adhesive or an epoxy adhesive? They start to learn what those differences are and that value proposition. So educating your customers and that level of engagement makes them really, really loyal to you and want to come back for more.
So I love this. Let's talk a little bit about how it all works together. And you've implemented this at several companies to great success and tangible results. What are some of the keys to making this work and avoiding some of the pitfalls?
First and foremost, you have to have buy-in at the top because this is not a trivial expense. And I'm not talking about the dollars spent on the programs. I'm talking you have to have complete buy-in. I'll give you an example. Within Salesforce, they have an add-in that you can put in Outlook. So every time you communicate with the customer, you can add that to their account. So the history is always there. So you don't lose it. So you don't have to work through 15 different programs to get this to work.
Right.
It's in one spot. You know where your CRM is. Now you're tracking. I'll give you an example that I didn't talk about, but one of the other cool things about Zoom is they have a thing called Enrich. So they're actually going out there and every week they automatically update they check every one of my contacts in my database. And if there's been a change of position, if there's information missing, if there's that person's no longer there because they're getting pinged back because the automated marketing is never being opened or gets blocked, that you get an error message because that email is no longer available. Enrich is automatically always keeping your data current. The other aspect of this is they have another part of their program that actually kind of does a little bit of automated marketing on themselves, but it's almost internal. So for example, my sales rep sends out a quote. Within 24 hours, Zoom Info automatically sends you an update to my customer service team within 20. Hey, here's your follow-up template. It doesn't send it to my customer service. It sends it to the customer. My apologies. Automatically, the customer, hey, we sent you this quote, and you write the template the way you want. You might say, we've held this stock aside for you just to make sure that you're ready for when you place your order. Would you like to place your order? And it does it again 5 days later. So that follow-up, we're finding our conversion rates on our leads and has continued to go up. And the order rate specifically and value of those orders actually started to go up.
That's amazing. What we could talk about this all day. Where's this going to go in the next year or two? It's just going to get better.
Yeah. From my perspective, it's going to get better. You're going to constantly upgrade these technologies. There's going to be more and more platforms. But coming back one full circle of what you just talked about, the biggest thing is making sure that all levels of your organization are fully committed to making this happen. The moment your sales reps aren't doing their call reports or not entering their projects or not following up the leads, the whole thing starts to collapse.
It's true. It crumbles very quickly.
And I bet you if you interviewed 100 companies, you're going to find that, yes, we've all implemented CRMs. And you're going to say, well, geez, that sucked, because probably 80% of them aren't really using their CRMs in the way that they should be. And they have a bad taste in their mouth because they blame the CRM. Really, they should be looking in the mirror and blaming themselves and say, what did I do to push the engagement and use of the CRM? And did I pick the right CRM or the right dashboards or the right things to measure that make it relevant? No different than they could do with HubSpot or Zoom Info. A lot of these companies buy all these programs, but they just don't use them.
Well, they think buying the program is going to get the result, but there's this big gap. I mean, if everyone who bought HubSpot, if all 80,000, 90,000 organizations that bought HubSpot were crushing it just because they bought HubSpot, it'd be a very different landscape out there. It's about how you use it. And especially on the CRM side, it's less about the technology and it's more about psychology and process and adoption. That's what we found.
Yep. There is no easy button. You have to make sure that everybody does it. And if they do it, guess what? The easy button starts to appear over time. And it gets better and better. And when everybody's growing and everybody's happy, lots of good things happen.
I think that's a great point. And that's a really good point to wrap up on. Before we go, is there any last bit of sales management advice that you want our audience to hear? Something that you've, that's really important to you and served you well in your career?
From my perspective, I've always treated people with the utmost respect. I've always given them every opportunity to succeed. I question to success versus question to failure. And those that are used to dealing with that style of management, they understand exactly what I'm talking about. Questioning to success versus questioning to failure. There's a big difference in culture, and it makes all the difference in the world.
That's outstanding. That's great value for this conversation. Dale, where can people connect with you online if they want to learn more about you and this 4-pillar framework?
Sure. If they ever want to have a discussion about it, I'm always open to those kinds of discussions. They can reach me on LinkedIn if they so choose. If they feel free to reach me, I'm Dale Miller. As you can see up here, I work at OK International. And I'm happy to help any company out there, as long as you're not a competitor, of course.
That is fair. That is fair. Dale, I really appreciate you walking us through this in such detail. And that does it for another episode of the Modern Sales Management Show. Have a great day.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.